Good morning. This is the Tuesday, April 26, 2022 Municipal Airport Authority meeting. Before we start, I'd like the people in the audience to introduce themselves if they could for the benefit of the people on the call. Start with you, please, over in the corner.
Jim Sweeney from Fargo Jet Center.
Great.
Calvin, Fargo Airship.
Dave Saul, Fargo Aircraft Maintenance.
Rick Flagspark, Cityscapes Development.
Aaron Anderson with the Airport Authority.
John Scraper, Maiden Hunt.
Jeff Klein with Maiden Hunt.
Dan Willis with the Airport Authority.
Thank you all. Again, can everybody hear us out on the call? Good. All right. First item, approve the minutes of the regular meeting from April 12th, 2022.
So move.
Motion second. Any comments, changes, conversation, nothing? Call.
Lind.
Aye.
Cosgriff.
Aye.
Capitan.
Aye.
Beckman.
Aye.
Hingham.
Aye. Number two, approve airport vouchers totaling $271,397.34.
So moved.
And I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any conversation? None?
Lind.
Aye.
Cosgriff.
Aye.
Capitan.
Aye.
Beckman.
Aye.
Hingham.
Aye. Item number three, individual vouchers. Mead and Hunt, $55,979.35. Mead and Hunt, $2,007.50. Mead and Hunt, $8,605.20. Peterson Mechanical, $55,600. 4 items. Need a motion
Move.
and a second.
Second.
Any conversation? None? Vote.
Lind.
Aye.
Cosgriff.
Aye.
Capitan.
Aye.
Beckman.
Aye.
Hingham.
Aye. Moving on to number 4, we received the January, February, and March financial statements. You should have gotten those in an email form and possibly in paper form. Question on the call? Okay, go ahead. Sean?
So Jamie Passanati is on from Balance Tax and Accounting, who helps to prepare these statements, and along with Steve Sprague. I guess if you have any questions, this is the format that our new system from QuickBooks provides the financials. There's a lot of information because we have a lot of different accounts, but I guess we're looking for your feedback, but these are the statements that our system does provide. Jamie and Steve are on to answer any questions from the city handoff as far as the different periods for 2021 or I guess how we're putting the reports together, so.
John? Question?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I would just suggest that our new service providers maybe schedule in-service review of the capability of the QuickBooks. I just received these yesterday, late afternoon. I haven't really been all the way through them, but I think it'd be good to have the accounting firm walk us through and talk about some of the options that they may be able to provide to us, condensing good. You got, the 3 basic accounts and why they're that way.
Jamie, can you hear that?
Yeah, so basically you're kind of looking maybe for myself to come in and walk through the monthly financials. You can ask questions, you can talk about format. Is that what you're looking for?
Yep. I think it'd help that everybody then would sort of have a good basis of what is there and what could be there. I think we could condense some of these more to a dashboard, that you'd have a cover sheet dashboard that kind of picks up from account totals and then the detail on back of it. Just so we'd all have
Those are the examples I gave you at the last meeting, which were the condensed versions. All of the accounts that you see here are the same exact accounts we used in the city process. We transitioned everything. So all the account numbers match, all the project numbers we use match. Everything's identical to how it was set up in the city when we did this last year. So for tracking and comparable purposes back, if the FA comes in to do an audit, it's going to be pretty streamlined from there. But hopefully at the next meeting, maybe Jamie can come in and we'll set aside 20, 30 minutes or whatever for her to do that. And like you say, when you click on what I gave you last week, you got the condensed version that you're asking for. And in QuickBooks, when you click on that, all the details are behind every single line item on what's there. And that would be the same for any of the line items that you see on here too. There's information behind each of those. So,
I think if we, like I said, just we don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but we can walk through sort of line by line, see what the totals are, what's back of them, and have a feel for it. And then as we go forward, maybe be able to develop a better sort of a dashboard for us to look at that would give us a quick view of where things are. And if there's questions, you'd have the backup material.
yeah, Jamie, I think there's lots of options within QuickBooks to do graphs and charts, and there's all kinds of different things, correct?
Yeah, we can do that. I think it's just a matter of figuring out what you want to see in that dashboard, what metrics, and then we can build it based off of what you're wanting to see in that dashboard.
So we have some that just want the condensed version. We have others that want to see all the ingredients in the sausage. So we can do both. I mean, that's not a problem to do so.
Yep.
And Steve, I know with the staff there, you're wearing two hats now with Kent retiring and so forth. Your staff has been outstanding to work with, as they always have been for all the years Joan and I have worked with them. Finally got through period 15, and of course the transition to pick up from there into our new system, that won't be an issue going forward as we'll have our own system, but it's just the normal thing that we're used to, getting all these different periods to close out the fiscal year that we've worked with for many, many years. But we finally got to some final numbers that you're presenting to the auditor. The audit began last week, and we finally had a place where we could start. Otherwise the numbers were changing. I could look every 15 minutes to see, or just wait until Jamie finally sent me an email, said here's the final numbers. So I didn't have to keep looking, because there's a federal report that we're required to have done for April 30th. It's an FA Form 126 and 127, which is used in the audit. So we got that there. So I don't know if you have anything else to add, Steve.
No, and we really appreciate your patience as we work through this transition. Rather than giving you numbers and then coming back a month later and say, okay, those beginning numbers now changed, and then a month later say, oh, those beginning numbers changed. We felt it was better to wait until we got to the point that we're presenting the numbers to the auditors. They were in last week. They started the audit. We are required to have the audit all, in its final format and all wrapped up by June 30th. So I'm thinking in the next 30 days or so, we'll have those, we'll be confident in what we've got, and then we can do that final close out and transfer the final funds that are still here at the city. And Sean and I discussed, if there are any late trailers that money comes into our Wells Fargo account, we would just put that into a revenue account and then cut a check back to that revenue account and send that check out to the airport. These transitions are always a little bit difficult because there's a lot of moving pieces in them, and so the other thing is that I think that our staff would appreciate a little sit down with the new accountants to just walk through to make sure that because your financials will roll up into our financials just like the dome does, and so we want to make sure that all those boxes are checked and all that kind of stuff too. There are some federal financial reporting requirements and some of that different stuff. We want to make sure that everybody's aware of those before, as we move forward.
You bet. Yeah, we can certainly do that. And we did provide, I think in almost record time, the requests that the auditor had for our federal grants that we have. And all of our federal grants are being audited this year. So between myself and Jeff Klein, the payrolls, the certified payrolls were uploaded, the ones that they requested. The federal forms and the federal reporting that Steve's referring to, the forms that I do, the forms that Jeff does for the FA, all of those were provided. So yeah, we can set that up, and I know Jamie is more than willing to do that. We started that with Kent and a little bit with Judy. They're both gone now, so as you get your staff stabilized, we'll set out and do that, Steve.
We certainly hope staff stabilization is high on our list here. We get that taken care of. It has been a whirlwind.
Yeah. The one thing that your March financials are probably missing, and it's less than probably $50, is the interest. And Steve and I spoke about that, the interest allocation. We still have a little over $300,000 in the Wells Fargo accounts at the city. And Steve, I see yesterday the must be the Cass County property taxes came in. The city will still receive the Cass County property taxes, our mill levy, and then Steve will remit that, or someone from finance will remit that to our bank account each month. So it's a little over 321,000 right now that's there. And like you say, as Steve explained, the desire is to leave the funds there for now. Once they're through the audit, then we'll transfer all of those funds to us. And what he's referring to as money that could still be trickling in, and Joan and I are pleading with Etihad Airlines, and there's some other foreign carriers who continue to send their PFC payment to Wells Fargo. And we've sent out emails, notices, they just don't respond. So there's another pending transaction that may still be coming into our PFC account. Steve and I spoke yesterday about maybe somehow closing that off so that they get a response back that the transaction didn't go through, but we'll see.
Sean, I just had a quick question. I'm just looking at the, the Jerry Hangar changed hands and the Nagel Hangar changed hands, but they're still on here. Are they going to change names on here to the new owners, or are they going to stay in
Those, because there's
account?
funds in those accounts, they'll stay there. We'll probably create a new account now for Roars. The hangar that
Dr. Glatt too?
Dr. Glatt bought is called the Northwest Hangar, so that won't change. That's a generic name. So the IDE account will go dead because they haven't paid the rent yet this year.
Yeah, not.
So that account will be dormant. We'll probably create a new account
Okay.
for that. Yep. We'll set up another.
Other questions for Steve or Jamie? Board members? No. Steve, Jamie, thank you for your efforts in trying to get this done in a timely manner. I know it's been complicated by personnel issues and tax time, so again, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to
Continue to
number 5.
work.
All right.
And Steve, you didn't sound like a chipmunk. I want you to know that.
Or Theodore.
Number 5, receive proposed RFP for audit services.
Okay, as we move forward, our 2021 books are still in the city process with Ide Bailey. As we go forward for calendar year 2022, which the audit will begin in 2023, we've talked about having the audit firm identified earlier than later, and this would be a public advertisement, if you will, for audit services. So I'll prepare a shorter version of this that will go in the Fargo Forum. It'll be on our website. I'm not sure where else it would be published. And then it'll direct them to contact us for more detail like this to respond. So if you have any questions or concerns, this has been used by a couple of airports in North Dakota, and it seems to get the job done as they had RFPs received.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, Sean, you may also want to identify local accounting firms and send it out to them.
I've already had 3 call, so
Okay,
that
just
followed.
so it gets out there.
Yeah, Brady Martz, Ide Bailey, of course, and what was the third one? I've got it written down, but they're all aware of it. Some are following it, so yeah, we'll make sure they're aware.
Good. Moving on to number 6, receive update from Mead and Hunt regarding terminal area study.
Okay, we have, I think Justin and Brandon are online from Mead and Hunt. So they'll give you an update on some pretty exciting stuff. We're making good progress in our terminal area study with the FAA. I've had a number of conversations with the FAA, and they'll tell us where we're at.
Yeah. All right, good morning. Yeah, go ahead. Real quick, I'm trying to share my screen. It's post disabled participant screen sharing. Any chance that?
He's working on it.
Is there any? Okay.
Yeah, Darren's working on it here.
Okay. All right. Well, while Justin is doing that, I'll just introduce the 2 of us. I think you guys, if you don't remember us, Brandon Halverson and Justin Anderson with Mead and Hunt. I'm the project manager, and Justin is the terminal planner, and also working with Jeff Klein there. So what we're doing, we've completed the data collection phase of the terminal area study. We met with all the stakeholders and received all their information, concerns, and so forth. And then we presented the demand forecast to FAA. And that was our huge milestone. Collected the demand for, came up with the demand forecast, and the FAA verbally approved it, and we should be getting written approval in the next couple days. So Justin's going to go through and highlight what we came up with and what our foundation is moving forward. So I will turn it over to Justin here.
Thanks, Brandon. Yeah, good afternoon, board, and thanks for having us this morning. I just want to confirm you guys can see my screen.
Yep.
Yes. Great. All right. So yes, as Brandon has stated, we are currently right here with the Board of Region and Forecast and Programming. This whole month we have been working on defining what the space requirements are for the new terminal, and that is based off of the forecast that we just received verbal approval from the FAA at the end of March. So that was a big step to get that approved by the FAA so we can move forward. So just to look at the outlook of the rest of the schedule. In May, we are going to be working on alternative concepts for the terminal expansion, where we will then identify a preferred concept to hopefully present to the Airport Authority Board in August with a public engagement meeting as well, and then with a September submittal of the final study report. So as Brandon said, we did do a site evaluation in January and February, and what we did was we compared the program and space requirements to that site evaluation, and we found although we are taking a look at an overall look at the entire terminal, these are the key areas on which we saw that there was space lacking to provide a level of service an acceptable level of service for the passengers. So just going down the list here, we did notice that the baggage claim and the rental car counter circulation was undersized for times. Pre-security restrooms, those locations weren't ideally visible to passengers. Baggage screening and the outbound baggage, so when you check your bags and it gets screened through the TSA room behind the ticket counters, that is going to be requiring expansion to meet future demand. The ticket area, as you'll see here in some photos coming up, the queuing for the ticket area, it does snake, and sometimes in the winter, that can become challenging as passengers are near the vestibules and it's facing those temperatures outside. So looking at expansion opportunities in the ticketing hall. And then also with our conversations with the airlines, they are, and Sean can, his conversation with the airlines too, they are requiring more ticket counter space, and then also some flexibility on adapting to new industry technologies such as kiosks and a two-step bag drop, which United is looking at releasing to airports of similar size to Fargo here currently. Security screening up on the upper level, security screening, we are getting a third checkpoint lane in the summer, but to meet future demand, we are looking to preserving space for a potential fourth lane, as well as the queuing. So the queuing for the checkpoint backs all the way up to the vertical circulation, the escalators and elevators, and that gets attention. That's a safety hazard to having passengers near those steps and escalators. The departure lounges, which I'm sure if you have flown through Fargo during peak times, the departure lounges can become very congested. So really taking a look at those departure lounges and seeing how we can expand onto them. Concession locations is a key one. So currently Fargo has about a 70%, 30% split, with 70% of concessions pre-security, 30% post-security. So passengers, when you get to the airport, you really want to get through security to get and be able to be at your gate ahead of time. So you don't really having concessions pre-security. Sometimes it can create challenges from a revenue-generating opportunity for the airport. So in this study, we really are looking on shifting that split and moving concessions beyond security to help generate more revenue for the airport and also to provide a better experience for the passengers. And then also for post-security restrooms as well, we are looking at reevaluating how many stalls and restroom infrastructure we need beyond the security checkpoint. So just to give you guys a quick overview, these are the forecasts that we presented to the FAA at the end of March. We are looking at about a 2.1% annual growth rate through 2041, which takes us up to about 748,000 employment. So this took into account the impacts from COVID, and how we got this growth rate was we looked at the MSA statistics for employment and population in the Fargo area. So that's an industry standard. Those are great indicators on passenger activity level at airports. So our forecaster used the regression analysis to compute these numbers for us to get 748,000 employments for 2041. So what we do with this and why this is important for terminal space and designing the terminal space is the forecast then get translated into a peak hour forecast. And a terminal really is designed and how large it is based off of what the peak hour is. So currently, the peak hour at Fargo, it does shift throughout the year. Some parts of the year it's in the mornings, parts it's in the mid-morning, and then some parts it's in the afternoon. It depends on when those those low-cost carriers come into the airport. So your Allegiants and Frontiers, because when they bring in their A320s or A321s, that can really impact on how many passengers are using the terminal at once. So with our forecasted peak hour we are looking at accommodating 558 employments at one time, with 521 deplayments using the baggage claim area and a rental car facility. So how we got that peak hour forecast, just quickly, we projected where additional routes will be coming out of Fargo, and this was developed with conversations with the airlines that we had the pleasure of talking to throughout this data collection phase. So with American adding an additional route to Chicago, and also upgauging these regional jets to larger aircraft. And that is an industry trend that every airport is experiencing right now. They're retiring these 50-seat regional jets, and they're starting to bring in the larger regional jets and the mainline aircraft. So the mainline aircraft, when I say that, is typically your A319s, A320s, your 737s. So you probably see Delta doing that with Minneapolis. They actually have a 757 or an A321 that sometimes comes in every now and then. So upgauging those aircraft and then also adding additional routes is how we forecasted that peak hour. So once you have your peak hour defined, then we try to identify how much space is required to provide an acceptable level of service. So what that means is we really want to focus on not over-designing the terminal and providing too much space and leaving the airport with a massive maintenance. At the same time, we don't want to under-provide, which that creates more congestion and it diminishes the passenger experience by being all congested. So there are some space requirements down here that we try to comply with when we do look at this space planning effort. And we want to, and here's a chart that shows space and maximum wait time to get that optimum level of that optimum space for the terminal. This is just another chart saying we go through the entire passenger journey through the airport. So typically in the check-in, we don't want the passenger waiting more than 10 to 20 minutes through check-in during waiting times if you're flying while you're waiting, we want to make sure that when you're in the queue line, you have about 14 to 19 square foot per passenger. Same with security. We don't want you waiting more than 10 minutes. That's when, through research, we've shown it's been studied that after 10 minutes, that's when the level of service gets diminished. So we want you to get you through that security checkpoint within 10 minutes with 10 to 13 square feet while waiting in line. So we do that all through boarding gates and baggage claim. Boarding gates, so that's an interesting one because we typically, at larger hubs, they'll sometimes plan to about 70% seated, 30% standing. At the small hub airport, similar to Fargo, we like to up that to about 90% seated, 10% standing to design the whole room. The reason being is because passengers, like I said, like to get when they go to these windy airports, they like to get there early and sit and have a seat at the departure gate. And guys, feel free if you have any questions, feel free to reach out or to speak up. So here are some pictures that we noticed during the site evaluation that you guys may have experienced yourself flying through Fargo. So when I say the ticketing area, the queuing snakes, here's Delta's ticket counter, and it goes all the way through baggage claim. When you have, let's say, for example, this Delta counter and then Frontier running another A321 flight, that's adding an additional 200 passengers with bags in this facility. So really trying to expand the depth of this ticketing area, I think, is something that we're really going to, or expand the lateral distance of the ticketing area, is something that we're really going to try to focus on to provide more queuing space for the passengers. Up here in the security checkpoint, this is during the peak time where the passengers, the passengers are exceeding the amount of space available for queuing, and it backs up to the vertical circulation. And like I said, from a safety standpoint, as well as from a passenger experience standpoint, we want to try to mitigate that as much as possible. The circulation in the entire terminal is something that we're also going to evaluate as well. So currently, when you go through Fargo, the circulation corridor separates the departure lounge and the boarding bridge door. So when you have when you're boarding your flight, that blocks the circulation for the passenger. So we kind of like to separate that and put circulation behind the departure lounges. So we're going to try to do that as many gates as possible for the new expansion at the airport. Concessions, like I had stated before, we're really going to take a look at concessions. We have ICF, it's another consulting firm who's a sub to us, studying this, and they're really trying to optimize the location of new concessions at Fargo to represent Fargo's local vibe, and then also putting them in a place that makes sense to help generate as much revenue for the airport as possible from the concessions program. So what does the space requirement look like? And this is the summary table of our space program and what we're going to be designing to. So here we have annual employment. So in 2019, we had 472,000 employments. The program takeoff for the terminal, we're going to be planning and designing for 748,000 employments. Here's the peak hour that we spoke about earlier. In terms of gates, we really want to accommodate the peak hour gate demand. So currently we have 5 gates. For 2019 levels, we want to accommodate about 8 gates to accommodate the RONs, the remain overnight aircraft. The aircraft that stay here overnight and then depart here in the future. So we are going to be looking at an another 3-gate expansion with a buffer gate as well for the terminal. In terms of, as you can see here, these X's are identifying what is meeting capacity and what is going to be needing improvement. So as you can tell, based off of all of the space and queuing wait times that we went over a couple slides ago, we are seeing that there's a lot of improvements that are needed for the airport to meet what the industry calls an acceptable level of service, an optimum level of service and wait time for the passenger. The big one you'll see is the difference between the departure lounges. So airports, when they were designed, back in the 60s, they were designed the departure lounges were designed to accommodate those regional jets, those 50-seaters. Well, as the airlines are retiring those and bringing in mainline aircraft, those departure lounges that could accommodate 50 seats are now experiencing 200 passengers in that departure lounge. So we are looking at about 3,300 square feet of hold room per gate of every new gate that we're proposing at Fargo. So currently there's 8,000 square feet total of hold room space in Fargo. We're going to be looking at 3,000 square feet per gate with the new expansion. Another thing too that you'll notice, like I said, the concessions program, and then also we are going to be looking also at a modified FIS facility to provide international capabilities. We are going to be preserving space for that. That way, if a carrier that's providing seasonal service to Mexico or a Caribbean destination, they could potentially operate that at Fargo. So that is something that we are evaluating as well. here are some of the themes that we're looking at. Like I mentioned before, and I might repeat myself here a little bit, but the circulation, we really want to put the circulation behind the departure lounge, relocating concessions, increase ticketing area, provide additional queuing for the checkpoint to maximize safety, and really enhancing the passenger experience at Fargo. And, that's looking at things like having a sensory room at the airport or a flexible support space that can accommodate services such as a lounge, or airports in the colder climates are now providing coat checks where passengers, they don't like carrying their coats around once they get through security if they're going to a warmer destination in the winter. So some airports are now implementing a coat check where you can check your coat at the airport, and it's a benefit for the passenger, it's a benefit for the airport too for revenue generation. And then also some baggage makeup behind the house stuff that we are looking at to maximize the flow of ground service equipment behind the scenes. So Brandon, if you want to review the next steps with everyone.
You bet. Thanks, Justin. So as Justin mentioned, our next steps here, we're going to be putting together an internal design shred. That's where we gather a bunch of our seasoned professionals and designers and planners, and we put together a few different concepts based on the building blocks, or what we would call the ingredients of what Justin just went through. So we take those and bake some different concepts. So we'll come up with 3 concepts, preliminary, present them to Darren and Justin, or Darren and Sean, just to get a first blush at how, if we're heading in the right direction. And then if we are, we'll develop those a little more, and then come back around to you, and then we'll review them, pros and cons, and then come up with a preferred concept. And with that preferred concept, we will we'll get into the weeds a little more on so we'll develop a little more details, develop the exterior facade a little bit to what it's going to look like, and then that is essentially the result of the report, this preferred concept that we want to propose to FAA and move forward with. So that with that overview, the design charrette is going to be we're getting into that, scheduling that. We'll start that beginning of May, and then around the end of May, we'll be coming around to Darren and Sean and show them what we came up with. And if that looks good, we'll develop that further, and then about the end of June, we'll be coming back to you and showing you what we came up with, and hopefully one of those 3 will appeal to you, and we can make a selection to move forward with and develop that preferred concept further. And then we'll have the final concept in August. Any questions on that process or the information that Justin went through?
Board members, questions?
No, it's a good review. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Thank you guys for the time today.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm curious to see what a sensory room is going to be.
Curious to what?
See what the sensory room is all about. So, sensory deprivation room. Anyway.
Yeah, it's been a popular Pittsburgh. They're going through a massive terminal program right now, and they're putting one into it's help people who have sensory needs. Flying causes a lot of anxiety with some people, so a sensory room helps alleviate that. It's just an amenity and a service that airports are starting to look into. That was just an example. I'm not saying what that's going to be happening here. It's just an example of what a flexible support space can be at an airport.
Thank you.
Justin, this is Sean. What's changed with Homeland Security in terms of the coat check? We do have requests often from people that want to store a coat, but right now we're prohibited from doing that. What has changed with Homeland Security?
Yeah, so and this has been implemented at Milwaukee Airport, but they have been in close communication with their local TSA, and they have a plan with their TSA on how that works. So I believe and I can look into this further, I believe at Milwaukee, they have someone that mans the counter, their concessionaire mans the counter and screens and manually screens the coat, and then puts it into a storage room and while the passenger's away. So it's that manual screen that their TSA was on board with on getting that approved. But that is, like I said, that's something that we want to explore. I know Milwaukee has had, and you can just do a Google search. They've had extreme success with the coat check, and passengers love it. So we can look further into doing something like that, and starting the conversation with TSA there.
Thank you.
Anything else from the group? Thank you. Let's move on to number
Thank you,
7.
guys. Thank you.
Move on to number 7. Receive communications from Fargo Aircraft Maintenance. Dave's here.
David Saul is here from Fargo Aircraft Maintenance, and then just before he starts, I'll show you the location that he's talking about. So Dave is here in this facility here. This is Fargo Aircraft Maintenance. Location of the fuel farm is over here in the South GA Fuel Farm, where there's a community tank here, Fargo Air Incorporated, and then Offutt has a couple of tanks here as well. There's some provisions made here where the semi has to park when it's unloading the fuel, part of the state health department requirements in case the hose breaks, to capture any runoff and so forth. But this is the general area where he's requesting his tank. So, Dave?
Well, just to give you an idea, right now I'm leasing a 5,000 gallon tank from Group 6. When we first started out, and we service Hangar 19, when we first started out, there was just a few aircraft. If I moved 1,000 gallons a week, I rang the bell. I mean, that was huge for me. Right now, just to give you an idea, last night service out a CJ2, CJ4, PC12, and I emptied the truck. And the tank basically only holds 4,000 gallons, and I share loads with Group 6, which works out very well. They're great to work with. We get a semi-load, and we get the little rate deduction on the semi-load. So right now, the way Hangar 19 is growing, they're talking about another CJ4 possibly, or something even larger. The fractionals have gone crazy. They're flying a lot, and we're running out of fuel in a 5,000 gallon tank more often than not. And so the next step that we really need to do to service out the place is to get a bigger tank, and that's where we're at.
So will this replace the tank that's there?
No, I'm gonna use both.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what the board has done in the past is, this is the designated fuel tank area for the South GA. We have one in the North General Aviation area, and of course Fargo Jet Center owns the old Northwest Airlines fuel farm over to the west, over by our maintenance shop. Is they would have to go through and follow all local, state, and federal requirements. So through the state, have it registered, come up with a legal description, make certain that the existing unload pad that's there, that was put in as a requirement of the health department, still meets the requirements. I'm sure you can reach it from that area. If a tanker comes in, you back in on the pad and then connect. So once he has those things in place, I guess you could approve, moving forward to the next step. Stacy will put together a lease similar to what we have with Shots and Group 6 now and Fargo Jet Center for a fuel farm. We get a couple cents a gallon. We may look at increasing that here in the near future, just as the cost. Plus they pay the ground rent, plus there's property taxes that they pay on it through leasehold interest. So if you have any questions, it's good to see that fuel usage is up. That means that more people are flying.
Good. Do we need a motion to start the process?
Yes,
Okay.
to approve the concept, yes.
I move.
We have a motion and a second. Any further conversation? None? Call the vote.
Lind?
Aye.
Cosgrove?
Aye.
Capitan?
Aye.
Heckman?
Aye.
Hingham?
Aye. Thank you.
Scroll Aviation.
Yep, the old scrolls. Happy scroll.
All right.
That's right.
Moving on to number 8, receive bid tabulation and recommendations for CMTA airborne pathogen mitigation.
Steve is online from CMTA. This is the project that, has been out there, Spectrum Aeromet, who's in the East Terminal, looking at trying to improve their air quality. And Steve, I guess if you want to take it from there.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, the project started out where we had a study, came up with some recommendations, decided to move forward with those recommendations, at a board meeting here a couple of months back, went through, did the design, bid out the project, invited 4 mechanical contractors, ended up by getting bids back from 3 of them. Those 3 were J-Tech, Peterson Mechanical, and BDT Mechanical. J-Tech was the low bid on the project, and they came in very close to where the engineer's estimate was on the project as well. So our recommendation is that we award the project to J-Tech Mechanical for completing that work for the Spectrum Aeromed space.
All right, motion?
Need a motion?
Yes.
I'll move.
I second.
We have a motion and second. Any conversation?
Make
None?
the font bigger on the paper.
Oh.
I couldn't read that.
It's a small bit, right?
Yeah, it's a small bit, I guess.
Call
Lind,
Aye.
Cosgrove, Capitan,
Aye.
Heckman,
Aye.
Hingham.
Aye.
Thanks, Steve.
I
And
resemble
when you
that
get the
remark, too.
contracts together, just send them to us and Stacy will review them.
Yep, all right, will do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to number 9, receive communication from CNH America to alter the activated area for the foreign trade zone, 267.
So the Municipal Airport Authority is the grantee for Foreign Trade Zone 267 here in town. We have space that runs all the way from Main Avenue out to Castleton, various areas that can be activated. So far, Case, CNH America, DigiKey have activated space. We continue to work with others to do that. So Case has evidently acquired the Bueller property out in the industrial park. And as part of the process to turn that into a foreign trade zone area, they have requested, you can see by the April 14th letter from Lynn Larson to Brad Stroud at Customs, they're asking permission to expand the amount of area that they have within the foreign trade zone. Foreign Trade Zone Board requires a concurrence from the grantee, which is the Municipal Airport Authority, and I've provided that letter to Jason Smalls, the area director up in Pembina. So, for your information, or if you want to take action to approve the request, that will be in order.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Second,
Second.
conversation. Only thing I would have is an unsigned letter from CNH.
Yeah, she hopefully will send me them coming here.
So execute that. Yep. Call the roll.
Lind,
Aye.
Cosgrove, Capitan,
Aye.
Heckman,
Aye.
Hingham.
Aye. Number 10, receive communication from State Investment Board regarding services they provide to political subdivisions.
So in your packet is a communication from Connie Flanagan at State Investment Board. We had talked about this at a few meetings just to see if they were an option, and we found out that they weren't, but to do our due diligence, we got that in writing, so we have it on file, that at this time that they aren't. I've had some conversations with First International Bank and Trust and their wealth management team about other options. I think there's some 2-year treasuries out there that we would qualify for that are about 2.4, 2.5% in that range. So that's one thing that we are looking at as well. But as you can see from Connie Flanagan's response here, they do recognize us as a political subdivision, but at this point they do not have a fund, if you will, for political subdivisions in our situation. Those that are invested with them have done something through what do they call it, home rule charter, I believe, to allow them to invest outside of the North Dakota Century Code 210607. So continuing to look for other vehicles. First International did bring to our attention a couple of weeks ago about treasuries. That's an option that we're looking at, but we're also looking at, their fees, brokerage fees and other fees, and hopefully we can bring that back to the board here soon to see if that's an option that you'd like to pursue. I don't know if you have anything else to add or questions or.
Mr. Chairman, both these, item 10 and 11, as we go forward, I think everybody will recall the reluctance of the City Commission to add the 2 mills of taxes for the airport. And one of the things I think we have to be very sharp on is maximizing revenue streams that are under. We're gonna go back and we're gonna ask for those 2 mills again. We have to have a very tight capital improvement plan, which we will have, where we can show where the money's going. But we also have to show that we're maximizing our own revenues. And so, in this case, when you look at using the Fargo Dome with a $40+ million surplus that they invest more from an investment standpoint, they're earning 8 to 10% on that $40 million, which we could look, I don't know what the average collected balance here is. Year end looks to be about 37 million. So there is a sizable amount. And the question we need to ask is not, can the state investment board invest with compliance and 210607, which is for temporary funds, and it makes sense. It's very restrictive to very current investments, and it's intended for if you're collecting taxes during the year and expending them all during the year, you would have that in a very liquid, low yielding investment. But if we move to a permanent fund, and if you look at the Fargo Dome maintenance fund, it's designated as a permanent fund. And so we have the option there, I think, to say, how do we invest outside of 210607, or do we encourage the state investment board, as they offered in their letter, to provide an investment vehicle that just ties to those investment items. The other thing that we can consider here is going out for a financial advisor role. And with that, again, looking to the city, the city's financial advisor has made overtures that if the airport authority were to select them, that they would provide services at 6 basis points on the basis of the combined amounts of both the city balances and the airport authority. 6 basis points is almost free, which would allow them to create the appropriate mix in line with 210607 for investments. And Sean, I think what you're saying is there's been a unique change here in the financial markets. 2-3 weeks ago, the yield curve inverted, and treasuries, short-term treasuries, popped up to 2.5%. We should have a mechanism that allows our investments to, look at those changes in the market and react to them. And so, I think it's important that we continue this, but we go ahead and say, not that we're trying to, do anything against state law, but to very openly say, how can we maximize that return? And when we're back next year in front of the city commission, if we're asking for a mill levy, be able to say, we're doing everything to maximize our returns and exist without that.
Do you know when they communicated the 6 basis points? Is it PFM?
PFM. Actually, Kent and I had
They've never
visited
communicated
with
that
it.
to us, so.
No, and other than saying, is this something you would consider? They're naturally gonna say, yes, we would take you to the bottom of our rate chart at 6 points. But until you put an RFP out and have them respond to it, that will not, that's more of a marketing that they would do that. We'd have to, do it with an RFP and see what they put forth. But a firm like PFM can help us structure those financial investments. Even if we are allowed to use the state investment board, we have to submit to them our investment policy and all those things. They don't do that for us. They just give us access to the investment vehicles that they have, whether it be their funds or different ways that you can pool your money and invest. So, I just think that's where we need to be headed.
Okay, comments from the board?
Well, I think it's smart to go to a managed investment model instead of just kind of leaving it in the bank. Concur.
I agree.
Yes, as conditions change and the opportunity presents itself, yes, we do have to look at it. It was interesting, the State Investment Board did see that a number of people are raising these same concerns with that scope. They fall outside the scope, and they're looking at altering that too, which I think is positive for the state, because it would be nice for the state to provide under the code an opportunity to invest these dollars for us. Not that it's keeping it in-house or in state, but it would be a good opportunity, so.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we can certainly look at, the city did provide us their request for proposal for financial advisor, and it's something that I think we can review and move in that direction. See where we go.
Is that in the form of a motion, or?
I'd make a motion that we pursue an RFP for financial advisor.
Okay, do we have a motion, a second?
A second, yeah.
Any conversation? None, call for a vote.
Lynn?
Aye.
Caltrans?
Aye.
Capitan?
Aye.
Ekman?
Aye.
We will do that, start the RFP process, gather the city's information and look at an advisor that will help us maximize return. John, you made a comment about a permanent fund. Unfortunately, permanent funds mean the money's gonna sit there. When you sit and look at $100 to $200 million of projects over 5 years with only 30-some million dollars in the bank, I can get concerned with the term permanent fund. Because the money is, as it comes in, it's gonna go out the door.
Right, and if you look at this, the permanent fund for the Fargo Dome is for maintenance repair. It's not as extensively used as the money would be from the airport authority. But what we would have to do is identify an average collected balance, and I think if we look across 12 months, we'd probably see somewhere in the 20+ million average collected balance. And so what we have to do, and that's part of what the financial advisor is going to do, is look at those needs and say, okay, and also submit to them our capital improvement projects with drawdowns anticipated through the 12 months. And it becomes a management device. We also have the capability, and again, this all goes back into the strategy of maximizing the returns. If we have a project, construction funding is available and is construction expense, interest expense, is an eligible project expense, we can make the decision of saying, look, here we're earning 8 or 9% on our assets here. We can borrow short term at 3%. It might make sense to actually borrow, pay the 3%, and benefit from the 5%. So it would become a maximization and an active management strategy. I do agree that you can't lock up the whole 37 million in a portfolio that is Russian assets and can't be exited.
Which, for the record, we hold no Russian assets in it. Alright. Moving on. Number 11, continued discussion regarding North and South General Aviation ground reports.
Your packet had some updated information from Mr. Flaxbarth, and he is here to answer questions and present his findings, or his directions from the last meeting.
Thank you, Sean, Chair, and
Commissioners, appreciate Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, appreciate the time this morning. At our last meeting, as we were looking through some of the things that we discussed, one thing that Commissioner Cosgrove asked for was a more detailed report and a couple of specifics. One would be looking at the consumer price index as being one way to use as determining what the rate should be. And John asked me, and this was after the meeting, I had a phone conversation with Commissioner Cosgrove, and he just said, I would like to see a chart that looked at taking the CPI and doing it on an annual basis, not just that bulk number, which, as I told you last time, from the last time the rates were increased, 1995, to February of this year, CPI went up 88.7%. So in looking at the numbers, 8 cents per square foot on the south GA, 10 cents on the north GA, it didn't quite double. South GA went to 15 cents, north GA went to 19 cents, okay? So in running those numbers, and that was the chart that was in your packet showing what that would be, but because it's such a minuscule change each year, I had to use a 4-digit number to show what those changes were. And so it virtually comes out the same as I discussed with John. So that, just to look at and say, how does that compare to, say, I think, John, you were referring to it as like a compounded interest. If you take a number and then move it over and then increase it by whatever that percentage is and so on and so forth. But virtually at the end, it was a wash.
No, Rick, I ran the numbers and shared them with you, using just a dollar. Hypotheticals that we have a $50,000 rental figure in 1995, and we increase it each year by the consumer price index for urban goods through that 30-some years. That 50,000, if that had been done, would be 90,000, about an 80+% increase from his point to point, which is what Rick did. But again, what we're trying to do here is develop a methodology. Again, this goes back to asking the city for the mill levy, and one of the criticisms they came back and when they looked at agreed upon procedures, said, yeah, but you haven't adjusted your land lease rate since 1995, which is a controllable revenue item for us that we have to be able to say when we're asking our tax dollars that we're doing all that we can with our revenue generating assets. I'm not trying to set the rate here, it's just how we should look at it. And so going forward, one way to look at it would be a CPI adjustment. That if you look at it over that whole time period, there was only one period where we had a negative, and that's the beauty of a CPI increase. You never reduce the rent. You just ignore it if it goes negative, and wait for the next one to goes back up.
Yeah, but you never go down.
Never go down.
One thing also that Commissioner Cosgrove asked me to do was look at some comps. So I did a comparable market analysis, trying to find ground lease rates in the Fargo-Moorhead area. Unfortunately, this is not a market where there's a lot of that in particular that's being used. So I ended up using a lot of examples in that those comparables of actual listings that had expired for whatever reason. Maybe they were taken off the market, maybe they were sold, or a deal was completed outside of the listing agreement. So that was also in your packet, and it's funny because when you look at the recommendation, because there was such a huge gap between 2 cents to $1, even running the analysis, it didn't come up with a recommended number. So and that's the one that's like, okay, so once again, are we comparing apples to apples? Are we comparing, what's the land use inside the airport, and it's very restricted use versus outside the airport, looking at what those land uses could be used for. Between our last meeting and today, I was able to reach out and make contact with a couple of people that I felt I needed to bounce this item off of them and get their opinion. First was Jonathan Day. He's the president of the Day Group, which is an appraisal firm in the Twin Cities. He was recommended to us through the Rochester, Minnesota Airport Executive Director. So I'm talking with Jonathan, and Jonathan's experience is also in appraising hangars and the ground leases underneath those hangars, okay? And so in talking with him, he said, no, he said outside the fence, it's oranges to porcupines. He said it's not something that you can actually take and look at and see that this is our comparables. But in his opinion, as far as what those rates should be, is looking at your ground lease rates, is based on supply and demand. Is how are you able to continue to build or have new hangars being built or being turned over? How are they being turned over? What are those dollars looking like? And is there a waiting line? Is there a waiting list? Is there a queue for people that want to get into the airport and have hangar space? So that, that was again going back to his supply and demand. I also visited at length with Neil Eriksmoen from Appraisal Services, local appraisal company with a long history. But also Neil has done a lot of appraisals in property here on the airport for hangars that have been sold. And he's also a pilot. He has his own plane. He does not have it at Fargo Airport. But in talking with Neil, in trying to get to, John, what you were talking about was trying to come up with a cap rate, okay? And for him, as an appraiser, and Neil's been doing it for a long time, he said, it can't be done when you're looking at utilizing land and the building on it, because the land underneath it is not owned by the people that built the building. So you can't look at that and justify and come up with a recommendation that says, okay, here's what the cap rate is, other than taking a look at what would be some of the recent hangar sales. And so we did that. I had him dig up, and we went back to starting in 2019, and we looked at hangar sales here on the Fargo Airport, and we went basically by what the price sold per square foot was, okay? And I'll get to that here in a second. We talked about, is the ground lease here used as a fundraiser? Is it looked at as being something that develops dollars? So if you took today's rate, the 8 and the 10, and you doubled it, Sean, what is that figure? If we double it, what would be the income increase per year?
We generate just under $60,000.
Just under 60,000 per year if we doubled the current rate today. So that if you're looking at saying, okay, what would it be if we did that? What kind of revenue source would be provided to the municipal airport authority? Okay, that's doubling it. Okay, which if we went by the CPI, we would come close to that. Okay, and we've discussed the escalator, trying to do it in steps and so on. So getting back to the hangar sales and looking at what those dollars are per square foot, what you end up doing though is also looking at what the city is looking at on their appraisal of these hangars and what's the tax value to them. So as these go up, the city, county, they get higher taxes coming in on every one of these hangars, okay? So the revenue to the city comes from the owners And as the increased value of these hangars go up, then this tax assessed value goes up, okay? And I think you have to look at that and say, how is the city gaining dollars through the airport? The best example I can give you is the tax assessment on each one of these. So going back in the last 3 years, the price range has gone from $28.78 a square foot to the highest, which was $62.50 per square foot for a hangar. Now, also you gotta remember, what they're paying for is basically, there's a line right around that building. That's all they're getting, okay? That's what their lease is. Because once you get past that, now you're on the apron. Now you're onto the land that is being controlled by the airport. And the airport authority controls that, you do the snow removal, you maintain the concrete of the apron outside the front door, right off the doors of the hangar, right? Is that correct? Good way to, okay. So it's a little bit different in what you're actually leasing, because you're basically only leasing what the building is standing on, okay? So the value is basically that. There's not anything else to it. It's just where the structure is around that. So other sales in the last 3 years, I've got $31.99 a square foot, $45 a square foot, $59.62 a square foot. Now, the other way to look at it, and going back to John talking about cap rate, is replacement value. We understand that if you had to replace a hangar today, looking at what some of these rates were, and you look at Jim and his project over there at the Jet Center, I'm sure that the cost of the materials has gone up dramatically since you first started looking at it. And it's not going to get any less, and of course the interest rates have gone up as well. So those values of these properties on a replacement value have and should go up. So that's what the city would look at also as they look at, okay, these costs, or what are the prices per square foot that have come in from sales from hangars, and as the tax value has gone up on them, the city has, reaped the benefit of that as well. So, is the ground lease rate need to be X? What are we gonna base that on? But has also the airport done its job in creating a great spot for business, that people that are a pilot and they have a plane and they wanna be here, okay? And there's a cost to that, okay? Obviously, those costs are going up. The value of these hangars is going up, okay? So where do we need to be with the ground lease, and separate, totally separate from what the value of those properties are? Because then it becomes a city assessed value and increase in taxes. Any questions?
Well, Rick, just going back and trying to make this as simple as possible, is if I want to build a hangar and I spend $50,000 for the metal building.
More.
Well, I'm just, throwing out a number.
Much more.
Now, if I'm outside of the airport, I'll have to spend another $100,000 to buy the lot. So the rent, the way to think of the land rent is what would you give to not have to pay $100,000 for the lot? What would you pay? What could you earn to take $100,000 and put it in the bank? And that's the cap rate. Now, we aren't trying to set, and again, we aren't trying to set that in this discussion right here. What we're trying to do is figure out the parameters of what it should be. And so what we do, we lease land right across the 19th Avenue from you at the Research and Tech Park. We're a separate entity from the university. And we just, at the time of a lease, look at comparable land prices per square foot. And so if it's $5 a square foot that we can find similar land just to buy, then we apply the cap rate of 8% and we say that should have a value somewhere at 40 cents a square foot. Just, it allows them not to pay the $8 and just pay the cost of that. That's what we say the value is, and then we will set the actual rate based on any other parameters. If they're gonna have contracts with the university, if they're gonna hire students, they're gonna create jobs. But all we wanna do is first set that price and then move off it. And again, it goes back to this mill levy that we're gonna have to fight for. The 2 mills that we're asking for is that we're maximizing revenue to the airport based on the assets that we have. And, you know, I think the proposal that we were looking at here takes and moves the 8 and 10 cents to 15 and 19 cents. But I think that proposal takes 10 years to get there. Wasn't that how it graduated?
I mean, that was an example.
Right, but what I'm saying is, once we have these stakes in the ground of saying these are the values, then we have that discussion. Because I can't say whether moving 8 cents to 15 cents over 10 years makes sense, or should it be 5 years. That's the discussion that would be had at the board and those rates set. And so I don't think we need to make it really complex at all.
Well, and one thing when I was visiting with Neil Eriksmo and talking about how do we get to X, how do we get to that number, and what do we use as that basis to get to that number? And his recommendation, his opinion, and quite frankly, I have to agree with him on this, is that maybe the best thing to do is to get some numbers, get some feedback from Grand Forks, Minot, Bismarck. He suggested the new airport at Williston, but you know, in realizing that there's some oil money that's going to be involved in that, so that may be skewed just a little bit. But in his recommendation, he thought also to look at Sioux Falls, simply because they are a hub for Amazon, and they have a FedEx, and they have a UPS center there. So take a look at like airports, but in specific, Neil was talking about Sioux Falls, and say, let's find out what those numbers are, and then take a look and just say, okay, here's what others are doing, because they're our industry. They're similar in scope and in business. And then take a look and say, where, based on that, what would our recommendations be back to the board, and do that. And that this morning would be my recommendation to the board.
Can you tell us per square foot Sioux Falls is currently charging?
Do not know that. Sean, I don't think I have that number in any of my.
You know, Grand Forks is, but they don't have many
36.
private hangars in Grand Forks. There's our university leases. They're in the 30-some cent range, but that might be a commercial rate.
The ground rate for Grand Forks was 36.
36, but they have very, very few private hangars.
Right.
And I think the other thing to keep in mind, and some private pilots that are aware of this, have, you know, if you own an airplane in Fargo, you're not going to drive to Sioux Falls to fly it every weekend, or Williston. You're going to look in our region.
Right.
That's the argument that keeps coming back. Is I'm not going to buy an airplane, live in Fargo, West Fargo, and then the Grand Forks to fly it every weekend. You can get comparable rates, but yet, you know, they're trying to fund different parts of their budget and so forth. But it may be a way to bring back some light, but yet what they're charging 200 miles away isn't really feasible in terms of someone that owns an airplane. I would speak to it, or Jim. If I buy an airplane, I'm not going to drive there every weekend to fly it, or every night to fly it. It's just not feasible. You're going to look for a home to hang your airplane within maybe 60 miles.
Exactly. And like when we looked at some of the comparables at the last meeting, there was like Oregon, and so we talked about doing more, you know, like a Rochester or something. It's impossible to find an apples to apples, but Grand Forks has a different business model with the university than Fargo does, but I think Sioux Falls is a closer with the Amazon and the size of the community and the business that they're doing is closer to Fargo, so I just thought it would be helpful to know what they're charging per square foot as we're trying to determine what's gonna work for us. Also, why do we charge a different amount for the south than the north?
I guess the board back in 93, 94, when Jet Center came, decided in a new area, different cost, to charge a little bit more. South G was already established, so.
South G is a little older, infrastructure, a little, I don't wanna say run down, but it's not as pretty. And so they're just charging less. So Mr. Chairman, if I may, the FedEx and UPS kind of said, hey, we're gonna pay 25 cents a square foot, correct, Sean? Is that correct?
Yep.
And that's kind of what they pay across the nation, is that correct? Or
Not
similar?
necessarily.
Not necessarily?
Yeah, it varies.
So anyway, the methodology of how we came up with the prices that we did was that had, the corporate rate or the, corporate rate is 25 cents a square foot. The private rate is less than that by about 20%. And so that's why how we came up with, my goal was 25 cents a square foot on the corporate and then 20 cents a square foot across the board for private hangars. And we don't have to gnash the teeth and go all over the country and look at all these comps. I'm just trying to take what we already are charging somebody and bring everybody else up to a relatively comparable number with that. If you're charging somebody to use that area like a corporate rate, I think that that should be at a higher rate. If you're shouldering this expense on your own and you have your own private hangar yourself, I don't think that you should have to pay the corporate rate because that is now falling on the individual. So that is my 2 cents, and I will cease.
Well, one thing that's come up in this, and Rick, thank you for your time and efforts, and I personally believe you should be paid for the efforts that you've put in. It's not to gain any new tenants, it's the effort he put in. I do believe he should be compensated for that, first of all. Second, I think something's come out of this that's important. The city and the county benefit from the improvements we do on the property, as well as those tenants, they are assessed. What city services and county services are provided to those tenants for the value they're getting in their tax base? Do we know that exactly?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think you have to look at municipal services that are available. Again, what are the public goods provided by the city?
Are they getting their roads plowed to the airport, to their hangar by the city, or is that?
Well, they're getting the roads to the airport.
Correct.
Just like your home, you know.
But what services for that property are they getting?
Same thing if you look at your property tax statement for your home, is that it's the public goods to it. There isn't specific, this is Rick's road to his house and we provide that, but it's a sharing of the public goods.
Correct.
It's also across the board for all taxes. The property taxes are paid on the improvement, not on the land. Land is leased.
So having said that, so the city of Fargo and the county of Cass are benefiting from this intentionally anyway, aren't they? No matter what.
As any building in the city.
Yes, but I think we should keep that in mind, the comment by the city that, or maybe a commissioner that, the tenants are not paying their fair share. Well, they are paying city taxes and county taxes. I think we need to keep that in mind as we move forward with those rates and adjustments, because they are paying.
Yeah, I think, Rick, and maybe this is just perception, but I think the argument put forth was just, hey, you're asking for a mill levy. You've asked to be independent of the city. What sources do you have for generating revenue to replace the mill levy? And so, I don't think they're saying this should be a certain rate. I think we just have to be able to show when we go back in front of them a year from now and ask for the mill levy, that we are doing everything to maximize the revenue to the airport from our assets. And it's not, I don't think we're gonna have an argument with them if we've gone through a process and had this discussion. And how we get there, and Paula, your point is, we started with a bunch of data points and we looked at them, and this is the number we came up with. We could argue forever in the validity of that number and never come to a conclusion, because it's gonna be totally subjective.
Arbitrary.
Yeah.
The FAA is
So-
looking for the airport to be fair, or to generate fair market value. Stacy and I heard that at a call yesterday with the FAA as we look at a concurrent use agreement from the FAA for the city to put in a pipeline on our property out to the new soybean crushing plant in Castleton. They want a fair market value easement. One of the tenants that was supposed to be here today, he wasn't able to make it, says, obviously he pays property taxes, they're paying the storm sewer fee, they're paying the street light maintenance fee, they're paying the drain taxes to the county, regardless of what they're paying for rent at the airport. But the funds that this generates, so if we, like I say, double the rent and generate another $58,000 to $60,000, goes into our operations and maintenance fund. It's not into the same fund that the mill levy money goes, which is strictly for capital improvements. That was been there since 1969. It goes for capital improvements. It doesn't go to day-to-day operations from that. So to generate money to replace the mill levy, it's in two separate funds. I'm just not quite sure how you get there with that.
Well, yeah, and that's something that we'll face down, but it's a little bit, if we have a plan to replace the mill levy and ask for the mill levy, we may have created a problem for ourselves.
I'm not aware that we have a plan to replace the mill levy, I guess.
No,
That's
but I don't think we want to be in the position we were in this year with a budget already developed and the potential for not providing the mill levy, a hole in our budget going into the operating year. And so all I'm saying is, as we go through this, let's be looking at revenue items that we can control and say, yes, we're working towards it. The criticism was that, why are you asking for this?
But that revenue is not going to be used for capital improvement projects.
Well, surplus revenues can be reallocated, and that would go back in as we look at our investment policy and how do we comply with 210607, and when can we change the nature of those dollars. And so we also have to look at the restrictions on the grant dollars, that how long does that stay under sort of those restrictions?
20 years.
Yeah. So some of that, if we look at the 37 million, has been developed over time, and we have to calculate what that is. But there are ways other than the mill levy to get the capital match.
So having this conversation, do we feel as a body, we have enough information to put to a motion the incremental increase in rates? Do you feel there's enough information that you have at this time, or do you need more?
I feel that a rate increase is appropriate since it hasn't been done since 1995. Since we're still determining what we want to end up at, and I don't think in 10 years we want to end up at today's rates. Why don't we do, instead of a 10-year plan, why don't we look at a shorter plan that includes an increase, but to be determined, so we're not locked into a 10-year plan.
So then I would entertain a motion, if that's something you're comfortable with.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think we should capture all of Rick's numbers here. If we could add, Paul, I think you asked for Sioux Falls rates, would bring that in. And I would suggest in the motion that we, over a 2-year period, move to the recommended 15 and 19 cents on land lease. I think that's somewhat what you were proposing too. Is we don't, I don't think that this is a huge financial burden to anybody, but we can do it in 2 steps. And the other thing is that we, every 5 years, then stop and pause and look at these rates again and see if we're online.
We actually do it every 3 is what the FAA would require.
Okay. Every 3 then.
So the motion is, John?
Motion is to move the private, land lease rates to the targets. You know, why don't we just do skip the north and south and just do an 18-cent target?
Sure. You
It's,
can get there in 2 years.
yeah, so we'd do 9 and 9,
Over a 3-year period?
2-year period.
Over a 2-year period.
And that we look at these rates every 3 years.
I'll second it.
Okay, I'm gonna have you repeat that, cause I didn't quite get it.
Yep. That we would move the private land lease rate to 18 cents, both north and south, at 9% per years.
9 cents per year.
9 cents, yep, per year. And that we look at, you know, we study existing rates every 3 years.
And we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay.
So just to clarify, in 3 years, we're gonna get to 18 cents?
Two.
In 2 years, we're gonna get to
But
18
we'll
cents?
review it in 3 years.
And then going forward, every 3 years, we just look at it. Again, we aren't gonna be right, but we'll have a basis.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion, and I'd ask for comments. There are people from the audience here that have made an interest in commenting.
So we keep it even, if you're at 10 cents now, you wanna go to 4 cents next year, and then of course 4 cents the following year. If you're at 8 cents now, you'd go to 6 cents, 6 cents next year, and then 4 cents, so that it's kind of balanced. Southie will take a bigger jump.
Yep.
You know, to
Well, and I don't
even
think
it out.
we're putting any undue burden across the per square foot of hangar space. $100.
If we can, there are people in the audience here that may wanna comment, and I'd like to afford them some time.
I just have a comment. As a member of the finance committee for the American Legion, we rent an office over in the old terminal. We've been paying 3% increase per year since we started. And I didn't hear the city coming after us for CPI when it was at 2%. Now that it's going to 8 or 9%, they're making comments that we're underpaying. And I don't think we're underpaying or overpaying. I think 3% increase per year is a fair increase.
Where this came from is the city, their audit process or whatever, had agreed upon procedures performed by Daily on the operations of the airport. Their one specific recommendation is when they looked at land leases, not the office space or the terminal, land leases hadn't been adjusted since 1995 and recommended that something be studied there and looked at. We've now done that.
All right, any other comments?
My comment would be, that, just looking at this in a big picture, to catch up after years of not addressing an increase over a 2-year period would be aggressive. That would be probably helpful to everyone paying those land leases, that it would be spread out for 3 to 5 years.
I don't have a problem, taking the longer time to do it. If we're gonna review them every 3 years, we can certainly stretch it to 3 years.
So we have a motion and a second. Do you wanna amend? Do you amend your motion?
I can't amend my own.
Take this,
Can you, or
you have
just,
to rescind the second, correct?
rescind the second? Eric, would you rescind the second so John can,
I'll rescind my second.
Well, yeah, just change the motion and do it over a 3-year period. Again, the idea is not to get behind like this again, and that would sync up to the 3-year review, and move this to a carrot. So you'd have a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 step.
so the motion has been amended from 2 years to 3 years. The incremental amounts equal over those years?
Yeah, I imagine the leases are sort of scattered throughout, are they January 1?
No, they're all variable rates, and the leases right now, as I mentioned before, the beauty of them is that you can change the rental rate on every anniversary date. So if it's 20-year lease, if it's a May 1st start date, every May 1st, the lease is subject to change.
Well, so, I mean, you'd roll these in then, you
Correct.
wouldn't just drop a hammer right now. So,
Correct.
as the leases renew for the next year, then you take the 130.
So this would be effective January 1 of 2023,
Yeah, whenever we would, if we
and then leases.
wanna, I suppose we have to set a date as of June 1st starting or something.
Because some tenants have already paid their hangar rent
Yeah,
for this year, others are coming due, throughout the year. So starting January 1, 2023, any of the
that would
renewals that
actually
we send
now
out.
give a 4-year adjustment figure if you start January 1st.
It's up to you. I mean, we'll do it however you feel.
I have one more question. We talked about the differences between the north and the south, but also, is FedEx and UPS currently paying us 25 cents?
It's 25, and that started back when Airborne Express came here in 95. One of our board members engaged 3 commercial realtors. They come up with 16 cents a square foot, and that increased 3 cents a square foot every year, 16, 19, 22, to where we capped out just a couple years ago at 25.
Okay.
Their leases all have every 5 years they're subject to an adjustment based on CPI, and then there's some language in the lease. The most it could go up would be to 30 cents. The most it could be is a nickel in that 5-year period.
Okay.
There's some convoluted language that they came up with or brought to us that is pretty common in the industry. That would be for FedEx, UPS, Bemidji Aviation, which is the Bollinger Hangar, and then Corporate Air, which is the FedEx feeder hangar. Those are on the 25. Cass County is also the sheriff's office over by the Air Museum. That's on the 25 cent. Also has the same language. That's subject to change every 5 years.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that.
All right, John, so the motion is amended to 3 years with a starting date of?
January 1st, 2023.
Okay. So we have a motion to increase rental rates, north and south aviation, for a 3-year period to harmonize to the same rate in a total of 3 years, with the starting date of January 1, 2023. Is that correct?
Yep.
Can I get a second on that motion?
I will second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Comments from the crowd? Or audience, I should say. None? Any conversation? Any other conversation? None? Roll call vote?
Lind.
Aye.
Cosgrove.
Aye.
Cavalier.
Aye.
Heckman.
Aye.
Hangman.
No.
So what that'll look like is 10 cents would go to 2 cents, to 12, to 8, so 10 cents, add 2 cents to get to 12 in 2023. South GA would go from 8 to 4 cents in the same time period, and then both would be 3 cent increases. So that gets you to 15. Same track. So South GA would go up 4 cents on January 1st, 2023. North GA up 2 cents on January 1, 2023. And then all of them would go up 3 cents a square foot to get there. Does that make sense, John? Yes. Okay, thank you.
All right, move on to number 12, review draft lease language for hangar ground leases. Oh, excuse me, for hangar and ground leases.
Okay, so some meetings ago, we were asked to put together some language at the request of Member Lind about getting airworthy aircraft into those hangars. Looked around at airports and all of them are very generic in terms of just an aeronautical use of the hangar, which is currently in our lease agreements. So this here would put some onus on the hangar owner, because we have a lot of hangar owners that aren't pilots and they have others that use the airplane, but at least the aircraft that would be in that hangar owner's aircraft, they would provide us an airworthy documentation that the aircraft is airworthy based on the inspection that's documented by an A&P mechanic every 12 months. We're going to have a number of exceptions to that. I was just making the list. The Air Museum has non-airworthy aircraft. The FBOs are gonna have non-airworthy aircraft in their facilities as they are being maintained and worked on. A pilot loses his medical, can't fly, and maybe decides to put his or her aircraft up for sale, and they let the airworthy certification, if you will, expire because they have the aircraft for sale and they're gonna sell it as is, so the new owner would have to come in and get it airworthy. We have a vacant hangar, somebody decides, they pass away in a estate sale, hangar goes up for sale and they just don't have an aircraft in there. Someone has a hangar for lease, the hangar's empty, they don't have an aircraft in there. There's lots of different variables that we can come up with, and I'm sure you guys probably have thought more about some of the exceptions that are gonna have to be put in some of the agreements. But I guess it's a start, and Eric's not here. Did he leave? So this was here for his benefit. You can receive it, think about it, we can talk about it at the next meeting, but also think of those exceptions. The other is, this was actually kind of brought to my attention from, I guess, a conference call we had on the National Airports thing, and Rick had brought it to our attention as well. We pay for all the electricity in the East Terminal right now. Other facilities that we own, like Hangar 9, which Spectrum has, or Hangars 3 and 4 in the admin building that Fargo Jet Center has, they pay their own electricity. But in the East Terminal, we have the chance of someone starting to mine cryptocurrency. And if you've seen the reports or if you've Googled it, it is very expensive. There are apartment buildings, I think even out west, maybe Bismarck, other locations that electricity is included, and all of a sudden they see a $20,000, $30,000 increase in their electric bill in a month. It's because someone is mining cryptocurrency. This language here, which we would amend into the East Terminal tenant leases, would prohibit that tenant from mining cryptocurrency in our facilities. Kind of protects us, I guess.
And I probably would add, and I just drafted this off the top of my head. I probably would add, if it comes to the attention of the airport authority that cryptocurrency mining has occurred, is occurring, that the tenant were responsible for that portion of electricity. And then there.
Increase, yeah, and then probably terminate the lease or something of that nature. So I shared this with Tony Grenberg, and he was kind of fascinated by it at Excel, that they hadn't really thought about language that their customers probably should have in some of their leases, and I think he reached out to the home builders and the apartment groups and said, something that you might want to take a look at, because there are landlords getting the country. So.
Mr. Chairman, I suppose there is no easy way to separate meter the spaces there?
No, it had been many years ago, but that, yeah, it's all 1 meter now.
I'm just trying to recall, but what I've seen, I believe I've seen in that is you, and part of the lease, electricity is included up to a maximum of $50 a month, or what, some number that, because you're gonna really start splitting hairs, because I can sit at my computer at work and mine crypto. It doesn't have to be this huge operation. I think that the economies are to operate at that scale. But, and I don't know, Stacy, if you're comfortable with your cap, electric that's included or something.
Just don't know how to get it back to the tenant.
Yeah, I think I believe it was looking that your rent's $200 a month, which includes up to $50 a month prorated electric. It should cover your electric. So if all of a sudden, but again, you're gonna have to try and identify, your whole building.
You wouldn't be able to prove which tenant might be, whether it's even the FAA themselves or one of the private people we have there. I just don't know how we would prove who was using the electricity.
The goal of this was just to make all those tenants aware that we're aware that this is being done throughout the world, and that it is a cost to the operations of the facility, and that it's gonna be incorporated into your lease. And it may make them think twice. Can you always catch them? Probably not. In a small scale, hard to do. Like you said, you could be doing it on your computer.
Well, the other way, I suppose, is non-varying maintenance and charge in, so adjust your lease payment, and the common area maintenance is, just sharing the electric bill by, let's see, per square foot. So if I got 1,000, 100,000, you can do a cam charge, which is pretty common.
I don't know, Rick represents us over there and has for years. I don't know if you have any comments or concerns, or if you've seen this with other tenants that Cityscapes manages, or.
I mean, we have properties in 5, 6 different states, so it's all different. Yeah, the only thing would be is, you know, dividing it up either by square footage and then say, you know, this is what it's gonna be, but then you've also got common area space where there's lighting, heating, cooling into those spaces that you would have to have, you know, some way to say, we're not charging you necessarily for that space, or you divide that space up and then equally divide it amongst the tenants in the building. Also, John, I don't know if you know this, but also in the East Terminal building, each tenant pays about $1 a square foot yet, I believe, for the yearly taxes on that building. So every tenant shares in the property taxes for the East Terminal building. That is not paid by the airport authority. So they already have, I believe it's about $1 a cam charge per year.
$1.25, something like that.
For their share of the taxes.
Maybe this initial one just puts it on their attention.
That's what I wanted to start with, cause I don't, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we can go to these East Side Terminal building tenants right now and say, guess what, now you're gonna pay your electricity.
Right.
Even though we can't tell if you're cryptocurrency mining, and you probably aren't. So I just wanted to sort of put it in there as, you know, notice to them that that's prohibited.
I think the language allows us the opportunity to threaten lease termination if it is found and if we see a spike.
And Mr. Chairman, I think that's what you have to do is protect your interest in that. So,
right.
Yep.
And if anyone wants to give me further recommended language, I'm gonna add termination language, but I mean, other than I own a Bitcoin, I don't know a lot about cryptocurrency, so.
So we'll bring that back at the next meeting with suggestions and some additional language.
So I'm training how to mine cryptocurrency.
You know how to do it?
No.
I think my stepson does.
Don't agree.
I'm sure you could Google it.
All right.
TikTok shows you how.
Jim, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just address that last line item of the lease language for hangar ground leases that's been proposed. I did a little research. I'm on the FAA government website right here, and there's a lot of protection already in the FAA documents that show, you know, as an airport that receives the grant assurances that Fargo is, just 2 sentences here I'll read you. It says, long-term, these are not permissible under the FAA policy. Long-term storage of derelict aircraft and parts. So, how are you gonna define that? But that's one, and then another section is what aeronautical uses are permissible, and it simply says storage of active aircraft. And my suggestion is, to give you a great example, at the 6 metropolitan airports, commissioned airports that surround Minneapolis, Flying Cloud, downtown St. Paul, Anoka, there are more than 800 individually owned hangars. And I spoke with the MAC and they don't have a policy to inspect or look at airworthy aircraft in those. And I don't have any, we don't have hangars sitting around with derelict airplanes. That's not our business. But I just caution the airport of going down something that's really not necessary. I think you've got protection that's already there in the FAA documentation. And it would be a huge burden on the authority to inspect aircraft. And frankly, I think from a federal and discriminatory practice, everything else, I don't think you can especially say that you have to have an airworthy aircraft every year. And some of Sean's examples are spot on that, I've seen pilots go through multi-year battles getting their medical back. And in that time period, they may not spend the money to annual their airplane. I mean, there's so many different scenarios, so I would just caution you to, take care of the challenges or problems that are out there, go talk to those people and those tenants, but I'm not sure that you need any additional protection within your documents.
Jim referenced the MAC. I printed out their lease, I think it was 83 pages for a MAC lease if you want a private hangar. And basically I was told good luck with that proposed language. So I did, and I was gonna hand this out at the last meeting, one before, so there is a FAQ on the FAA website that Jim probably referenced. Make some more copies of this and spread that around, but since we're required to follow this, that we are pretty well regulated. In the lease agreement, we talk about following federal guidelines, and this would be an example of that, which is a fluid document. It's a living document, so it changes. But this is, I think, what Jim cited from here. So I can make more copies of this. I've had this for a while, but if you want a copy, you certainly can have one. I'll have to make more copies. I got one here, another one.
Mr. Chairman, I do have to.
Thank you.
We got at 10 o'clock.
All right,
Let's
yeah,
keep it
we're-
good.
Okay, let's, if nothing else, let's move on to number 13.
Terry, do you have anything? Sorry to keep you waiting.
No, other than, the checkpoint, we had our meeting, at, the actual site, we had 4 electrical contractors, show up, we had 0, general contractors, show up. We talked to we talked to all the contractors. 2 of them have said they're not going to bid it. 1 is gonna bid it for sure, and 1 might bid it. So Joe's doing some individual orders for those people here next week, and the bid is on May 3rd at 10:30.
Jeff, anything?
I guess the only thing I'll bring up is that next Wednesday of next week, May 4th, there's a bid opening for the access control project, which is just the card scanners at the secure doors, video cameras around the airfield gates. And then when Springer actually gets started on East Economy lot.
I see Bill Bulkautz is on from American Airlines. Bill, thanks for joining. Bill is the properties person that signs all of our leases with us. I don't know if you have anything to add, Bill?
Sounds good. Interesting meeting. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for joining. The only thing is Allegiant is putting out notices to airports. This was received on April 12th, that June, July, and August, they've cut 22 of our flights. I expect that this will double. Probably more with Frontier and so forth. There's just no pilots. So American night now is down to 2 Dallas, 2 Chicago, and I think in a perfect world, they'd love to be at 4 to Dallas, 4 to Chicago. Of course, our Phoenix service is seasonal as they struggle in the pilot shortage issues. So this was a big topic of discussion on Monday during our National Airports call, is all of these notices the airports continue to receive, and it's gonna get a lot worse before it gets better, I'll tell you that. That's all I have.
Nothing else? Meeting adjourned.
Mr. Chairman, just one quick announcement, I'll put on my Air Museum hat for you. In our ongoing history education series, tonight at the Air Museum, we have a retired U.S. Navy Captain Gilroot, is known to this community very well. He's doing a presentation at 6:30 tonight, and we're opening a new exhibit, a naval exhibit at the museum with a ribbon cutting at 4 p.m. So for any encourage children and kids especially that have any aviation or military experience to come out and listen to Gil tonight at 6:30.
And
Gotta go to Bismarck.
yeah, and Fargo South graduate Brian Kesserling will be here, who is the lead Blue Angel right now. This team, he flew in Fargo last year and is still the lead Blue. He'll be here today as well.
I think he's gonna be virtual, is that right? Yeah. I think Brian's gonna be virtual, but Gil will be.
He'll still be here.
All right, thank you. Meeting adjourned.